friends, welcome to Rosemonde Knits. Hello, hello, come in. Welcome to my very colourful home. My name is Ros and my pronouns are she, her. And this is a new podcast video log about everything that I'm knitting, making. It will mostly likely be about my knitting, but it will also be about yarns that I love, other crafts I may want to embark on, and inspirations, things that bring me joy. I will also be mentioning the disability that I have, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis and fibromyalgia. I'll refer to the first one probably by saying ME, and I will only mention these in passing or just how it's affected my week or my day, or but it's something that not everybody knows about, so yeah, that will likely come into it as well. So this will be quite a typical formatted knitting podcast where I'll talk about things that I have completed recently as well as things that I'm working on. And I would love to hear about what you're working on, what's exciting you, and we'll go from there. So here we are. I've been knitting for about 8 or 9 years now, and watching podcasts, following knitters on Instagram since about 2017, so about 7 years. And I have some real favourite podcasters who I love to catch up with every time they post a video, and I will talk about those people no doubt very often. And I guess I wanted finally to be able to talk back and to join in that conversation. So yeah, let's get started. First of all, what am I wearing? I'm wearing my most recent finished object, which is the Sweet Lace Sweater by Susan Lynn, who is on Instagram as Yeoni Makes. She's my current favourite knitting designer. I have test knit for her. This wasn't a test knit, but I did get the pattern pretty much on the day that it was released and cast on straight away. So this jumper is knit top down. It is a raglan jumper, and as you will see, I'll be putting pictures on the screen as well. Maybe here, maybe there, I don't know yet. Of me wearing it in its full length, so you can see better. It's quite hard for me to stand up where I'm sitting here in the little knitting nook craft room that I have here in my home. It has wonderful lace dramatic sleeves. I knit my sleeves, I knit about 3 extra lace repeats on these sleeves. It's blowing out a little bit because I've been fiddling with the lights to try and get things to look as realistic as possible, but yeah, it's tricky. So I knit about 3 extra lace repeats to make the sleeves even longer and even more dramatic, and I knit the body substantially longer. I had a lot of doubt as I was knitting it to see, like, should I have stopped when the pattern stopped? And I think if I was someone who wore dresses a lot or who wore high-waisted trousers, I'm very much a Gen Xer who hasn't embraced the high-waisted trousers, jeans yet. Maybe I never will, I don't know. And I have a very long torso. So rather than follow the pattern exactly, I decided to add probably 5 extra inches of length. And I tried it on with my favourite comfy trousers that I wear, which you probably will be seeing or have seen, and I'm delighted with the length of this. I'm pretty much housebound, bedbound because of this ME that I have. And so I like to think of myself swanning around and being all fancy and going out, and maybe I will be able to one day, but I also am embracing that dress up when you're at home as well, like wear your most favourite knits even if you're just sitting in bed, because they just make you feel so good. I should talk about this yarn. I knit this using Eden Cottage yarns in their merino linen Celt fingering base, and I loved it. I really enjoyed working with this yarn. I think it's 90% merino, 10% linen. And when I first saw Susan release her pattern, she knit hers with merino linen yarn as well, in an incredible bright pink. And I just loved the way that that version of the sweater drapes in the merino linen blend. So I thought I'm going to look for a similar base, and my mum, wonderful mum, bought me a sweater's quantity of this. It's in the colourway Bog Myrtle by Eden Cottage Yarns, and I really enjoyed having this colour in my hands. So yeah, really pleased with this make. It took me about 6 or 7 weeks to knit pretty monogamously. It's knit on about a 29-30 stitch gauge for 4 inches, which is my current favourite. I think when I first started knitting, I went pretty much straight to super chunky yarn because that sense of completion really quickly was so satisfying. And as time's gone on, I've just got to enjoy knitting much a smaller gauge, and I also really enjoy the feel of a fingering weight sweater on my body, and I enjoy how those weights of yarns feel in my hands when I'm knitting with them. So that's all about this most recent beloved finish. Before that, I was lucky enough to test knit for Susan, and I test knit her Sweet Whispers tee, which I have one of here. Let's see what you can see. It's changing the colour in the screen quite a lot, this bright green. I knit this in Emma's yarn, who is a hand-dyed yarn dyer from Florida. There is an online shop in the UK called Yarnworks who imports this yarn, and I just loved this colour. This was their August 2021 club colourway, and this is their super silky base. I can't remember the exact amounts of merino and silk. I don't think it was that much silk, but it just gives that extra drape and a slight sort of sheen or glimmer to it. And what I love about this design is there's so many things to love about this design. So first of all, you cast on, it's top down again. This is a yoke tee rather than raglan shaping, and even at the cast on you have got these little, you see, yeah, they're these scallops, and I have never knit a collar or a neck cast on in this way, and that's one of the things that I love about Susan. Every time I knit one of her patterns, I learn something new, and the way that she explains this new way of doing something, it never feels impossible or like overcomplicated. She just walks you through it really simply, and you just feel like she's holding your hand all the way through, which I just love. So you cast on this cool edging, and then you increase, and then you start this little lace detail, which is just sweet and very Moorish when you're knitting it. I can't remember the rows in between, but you have a few rows of doing that very simple lace detail, and then you have a few rows of stockinette, and then again you have the lace detail. So you're always looking to get to that next bit of lace detail, and it just meant that I think this even though again it's on 29 stitch per 4 inches. And at one point, because of the drama of the sleeves, there were a lot of stitches on your needles. It flew because of how fun it was, and again how just straightforward it was, and I just wanted this off the needles and ready to wear. So I'm just going to see, I will put pictures up as well, I'll try to, whether you can see this lovely puff sleeve detail and the way that it hangs off your shoulders. It's just a delight. So I love this, I love the colour. One of my favourite podcasters, Caleisha of the Quirky Monday Craftcast, she might be my #1 favourite, who I've watched for years and years, and who isn't, she is so artistic. She knits, she crochets, she spins, but she also is an artist, and she really inspires me to do more than just knitting, even though it's not really just, but you know what I mean. I have been brave thanks to her and the way that she goes about her art practice. And yeah, I've tried lots of different things because of Caleisha. So Caleisha knit one of her own designs using the same yarn the other month, and I had this yarn in my stash, and so seeing Caleisha use it, I thought, yep, I'm going to cast on with mine and knit Susan's new pattern. So this was a test knit, which was a joy, and a really fun test knit group as well. And I've worn this a fair amount already. It's just one of those colours that makes me feel really good when I wear it, and yeah, it's a lovely bright colour. I knit another one of these, which isn't in the room, out of Hossain, Super Soft the first time, and I knit that one tunic length. I've used Hossain Super Soft once in a Stephen West Cal. In fact, I think it's hanging right in the back of the room here behind the twinkly lights. And I held the yarn double for that, and I found it was quite stiff, and it did make my fingers quite sore, and I didn't love that knitting experience. So I wasn't sure how I'd feel using it for this other top. I'll see if I can put some pictures up of that as well. Anyway, but the good news is I followed Amy Palco of the Meaningful Stitches advice about using Hossain, that when you are blocking it, not to use like a detergent, which I know a lot of people use and swear by, but just to soak the garment, drain the water, soak it, drain it, soak it, drain it, until you see less of that kind of brown lanolin-y oil that can come from that yarn, and then leave it to soak overnight. And I did that, and it feels great. I really like how it feels on my skin, which is a joy. And they are really good value yarns and lots of wonderful colours. So I have some sitting here next to me, which I am planning on using in a colourwork jumper at some point. We shall see. So those are the garments that I have finished most recently. The other finished object that I wanted to mention is this one. Now, this was a test knit as well, very special test knit by Soraya Hossain, who I actually have to thank the most, I think, for giving me the confidence to sit down and actually podcast. I have had so much support from people I've met on Instagram. I'll put my handle somewhere on the screen if I haven't already done that. Because Soraya had listened to me being interviewed by Dr. Maya Hobbs, who is Knitting is Therapeutic on Instagram. I'll check and put it on the screen. I was interviewed by Maya back in 2020 or 2021? 2021, I think. And Soraya had just listened to that and sent me such a lovely, encouraging message having listened to that. And it was that message that made me go, right, it may be time at last for me to get on with myself and actually join the conversation on YouTube, because I get so much out of it, and it's just bravery or lack of it that has stopped me from trying. So thank you, Soraya, and thank you for sharing your art and for your kindness and wisdom. And it was so fun test knitting for you. This was a scarf knitting with beads, which I have never done before, and you use 29 10-gram minis, or you can use 15 20-gram minis and divide them into and for each 10 grams you have a different pattern. So I'm going to stop talking just so that I can show you. So beautiful, so beautiful. And it again, it was one of those patterns where 10 grams of knitting does not take long, and for me anyway, and because of the pattern changing slightly, and again it's just knits and purls, nothing more complicated than that. But the way that it changes, it just makes you want to get on to the next section and the next colour. I used a yarn countdown calendar that I had received in 2021 from the Camels yarn, and they are a dyer based in Cornwall in the UK. Oh, I'm in Bristol in the southwest of the UK, about 2 hours from London, about an hour from Cardiff in Wales, and we can get down to Cornwall 3.5 4 hours or so. Yeah, so I've lived in Bristol for nearly 30 years. I'm 47, I came here when I was 18, yeah, so 29 years this September I've lived in Bristol, so that's where I am, and it very much is my home. Anyway, the yarn dyer is in Cornwall, and it's the first time I tried her yarn, and it was a really beautiful advent calendar. But it was sitting here in my yarn room and not being used properly, so I finally did something with it. I'd love to make more of these. I'd love to make one as a gift, or two as gifts for either for my sisters-in-law or my mum, or my mother-in-law. They're just, it's a very wearable shape. It is quite narrow. You can make it quite narrow, or you can make it a bit wider, and you can do it all in one colour with bees or in few. I mean, the options are endless, I think, but certainly if you have collected lots of minis, if you've collected lots of 10-gram minis, great. If you have several 20-gram minis that you can just divide into two, great. So yeah, it's a lovely pattern, and if you don't already follow Soraya, Soraya is the owner of Maliqua Wire as well. I'll put all of these details below. My cognitive disabilities can glitch, so I'm going to do my best to make sure that everything that you need is below. But if I've missed anything, or if you want any information, just comment below and I'll look at the comments and I'll reply, or send me a message on Instagram and I'll reply as quickly as I can. So that's FOs. I'm going to have a little sip of my sparkling water. I should say it is Friday, the 18th of August 2023. Today is Friday morning. I'm very much a morning person, even though I have this condition which is very fatiguing. I often wake up bright and early and feel the most myself at this time of the morning. At that point I then have to be careful not to do too much, otherwise I then crash and burn and sleep all day. So this is a kind of experiment to see how much energy I can keep. But yeah, it's morning. It is 7:45 in the morning on Friday. My son is at his dad's, who is also in Bristol, and my son, who's 13, he is off to Barcelona with his dad tomorrow. So just for a little holiday in amongst all of the wildfires that are happening around the world. Barcelona should be okay. And I think I'm going to be knitting a lot, thinking about him being away and hoping that he's okay. It's funny because he really hates the heat, and it's going to be really, really hot. But I think they have a pool and there's going to be air conditioning and stuff, so he'll be fine and it'll be a wonderful adventure. But yeah, that's what's in my heart today, and yeah. So there are my FOs. I'll put those down somewhere. So yeah, what am I working on? I've become a relatively monogamous knitter, so knitting one project diligently at a time, which for a long time I haven't been like that. But certainly when I'm knitting something like this, I really focus in on it, and it's really, you know, just being really present with the project and enjoying every stitch and enjoying every millimetre of growth that you see. Is just, it's become such a joy for me. But right now I would say I have 2 or 3 projects that I'm flitting between. So the first of those is another test knit. I don't always do lots of test knits, but this year I really seem to have been inspired to join the test knit train. I don't know if you follow her, but if you don't, you've got to follow her. She's Lavanya Patricella on Instagram. Very cool, beautiful person. Yeah, inside and out, and I have followed and just loved her style for years. I love her use of brioche, and I love brioche as a stitch. So this test knit is a brioche sweater. Because it's a test knit, I don't want to give a huge amount of information, so I'm just going to show you. It's DK weight, and I have various DK weight yarns in stash, and this happens frequently to me where I have an image in my mind of the yarn that I'm going to use for a project, and I think, yeah, that's what I'm going to use, and then I cast on my swatch, and after a few rows I think, nope, that's not the colour I want to use. So for me, that's one of the reasons why swatching is so important. The other is to make sure you get the right needle size, or you end up with a jumper that's the wrong size. So you do you, but I have learned over the years that if I want a jumper that's going to fit me and that I'm happy with, I have to do a swatch. And 8-9 years down the line, it's become a fun thing for me to do. The swatch is the playtime. So here's my playtime for that jumper. Let's see how the colour is going to go. So that's the right side of the swatch, and here is the wrong side. So this is where I was. I started with this colour here. Most of these yarns are by the Wool Kitchen. Helen, who I have had the fortune to meet two or three times. She's a very good human, again, and a beautiful artist. I treasure the yarns that I knit with of hers. So yeah, I started with these pair, and I was sure that that was what I was going to do, but then I held it up to myself and thought, I don't think I want a jumper that is all like that. So then I used the same background colour and put a bright pink with the background colour instead. And here you can see the background colour there. And again, I thought the pink was just too bright and I didn't want it all over. So then I found a slightly different background colour, again by the Wool Kitchen, and this bright corally peachy colour, which if you already follow me, you'll know is one of my favourites. And as soon as I started knitting with this, I just felt like, yeah, that's what I want, and that's what I want in my hands, and that's what I want as a jumper. So this was my play swatch, and I quite like just hanging on to these and reflecting on the playtime that I have, and the process that I go through to find exactly what I want to use. So here is the background colour that I'm using. Yeah, this is the darker side of Ziggy, is the colourway, and it's 100% merino, and it's dyed by the Wool Kitchen. And then for the main colour, I am using 2 fingering weight yarns held together. I really wanted to use my stash. So this is a merino silk yarn by the Wool Kitchen, and that's the colourway Frenchie. I had some Frenchie in stock, but I don't own a yarn shop. People say I should sell yarn, but I don't want to sell any of my yarn. It's my yarn stash, my yarn collection. Anyway, so I had some of this colourway in DK, but I think I had bought them at different years and different stages, and one was a lot more orange than the other. Whereas I have a few skeins of this and a few skeins of this, which is the colourway Jellyfish by my friend Tracy, who lives really close by, and she has a yarn shop on Etsy called Somerset Yarns, and she dyes lots of lovely bright colours, which are my favourite. So these 2 colours together are my main colour, and I have enough of that for the jumper. So here's where I've got to so far. I haven't got very far, but I enjoy brioche, and I enjoy brioche jumpers, and I enjoy the rhythm that the stitch gives me when I'm knitting with it, as well as the squishiness that you feel when you're wearing it and when you're making it. So the jumper will actually end up being like going this way. That's another pretty fun construction. And yeah, this is what I have so far. So that was the right side, and that's the wrong side. I think the notion with brioche is that really it's reversible, so you could wear it either side, but for me this is how I will probably choose to wear it. I'm really excited to test for Lavanya. You know, when you have these heroes in your world, and one of the things that I think is pretty cool about the knitting community is that it's a small enough community that when you tag a designer, for example, you often get a reply, and especially I tend to prefer to knit patterns by people who have smaller followings. I don't usually jump on bandwagons. There is an annual exception to that, which is the Stephen West Mystery Knit-Along, his shawl mystery knit-along in October, where that bandwagon I jump on with my feet and my hands and everything, and join the world craziness that happens when it's his mystery knit-along. I just love that time of year. But I'm not someone who's going to jump on the Rhinebeck sweater, everyone knitting the same jumper by the same designer who already has nearly 100,000 followers or whatever. What I find gives me the most pleasure is supporting smaller designers who are often genius that are missed because of the algorithm or for whatever reason, and that to me is just more interesting. And I think the more people that we can help be successful, the better our community is. So if there are only 3 or 4 designers who everybody's knitting the same patterns from, that's kind of like the capitalist kind of world, and I'd rather see if we can enable our community to be a little bit more equitable or something. I have quite big opinions about this, and I'm definitely my dad's wokest child. So I will no doubt throw in some political opinions that you may or may not agree with, and that's fine. This is my channel, so I'm allowed to have my own opinions, but you too are allowed to have your opinions, so feel free to share yours. I am happy to receive any comments or opinions that are yours. So yeah, that's a sidetrack. Anyway, so that's project number 1, and that's Lavanya Patricella, who has got quite a big following, I think, having said all of that. But still, I think she's a pretty cool individual, and I'm delighted that I got accepted to test knit for her. Yeah, right. So that's that one. Okay. So the next pattern that I'm making is by another very well-known designer, having said all of that. This is by Johi Locatelli, and this is Johi's Longline Cardigan. When did it get published? I don't know. It's not a super recent one, I don't think. But I was watching Hannah of Cozy Cottage Crochet, her podcast, and I think Hannah's now made 2 of these cardigans. She's definitely made 1, and I was just blown away by the colours that Hannah put together and the shape of this cardigan. When I saw it on her, I thought, oh, okay, I love that shape of a cardigan. So if I figured out how to do it, I'll put some pictures up on the screen of me trying on where I've got to with this yesterday. Because you basically knit the back, you knit the back of the collar, and then it kind of grows out from there in pieces until you get to the underarms where you join the fronts with the back. So I just joined the fronts with the back yesterday, and it's such a satisfying moment. So here is where I am. It's pink and orange, which is my favourite, and it's really bright. And the yarn I was gifted for Christmas by my mum, dyed by the fabulous Jude at Stranded Dye Works, who I had the joy to meet years ago at my friend Kim's yarn shop down in Somerset called Alternate Universe. I'll link her below. It's a destination yarn shop for me. It's cozy, you can get delicious drinks, really well chosen yarn, but just the thing I love the most about it is you just feel like you're walking into your own home when you're there, and you're so welcomed. And yeah, they're just really good humans. Kim is an awesome human. I love her. So anyway, I met Jude there at Kim's shop. Can't remember now, a few years ago. And I love Jude's yarn. So I was delighted to cast on with this. This is the Pinata colourway. Yeah, you start this cardigan by making a kind of square thing at the back of the collar and knitting out from there. And as you do it, it's one of those where you think, what's going on here? And then you get to this point and you think, okay, it's going to be wonderful. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to knit another couple of inches of the body, and then I'm going to knit the sleeves, because I want to make sure that as I'm alternating skeins from top of the cardigan to bottom, I always start with the most saturated colours at the top and kind of fade down from there. So I've saved the saturated colours that I started with, and I want to have those for the top of the sleeves. And I just want to make sure that I'm keeping that yarn as consistent as I can with the body. There are some mistakes that I am happy to embrace, and I think working with hand-dyed yarn, you have to embrace a certain level of imperfection in terms of colour consistency, but I like to do my most at trying to keep the yarns even, especially if you're knitting the sleeves separately, sort of from the top of the sleeve down, so that you don't get this kind of jarring, you have this part is one colour and that part is another colour. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing next with this one. But I just love this colour, and I think the therapy of having the colour that you love in your fingers when you're knitting, it just, yeah, it never fails to make me happy when I look at this and I'm knitting on this colour. I just, yeah, every stitch is a complete joy. So thank you, Jude, for your yarn, and thank you, Hohi, for your talent. Hohi's another super cool individual who I'm really happy to support, so yeah. And then last but definitely not least is my Wafla cardigan. I've knit one Wafla cardigan already by Fatimah. This is Fatimah Hinds's Wafla cardigan. There she is. And it's just the first cardigan I knit. As I was knitting it, I knew that the colour would really suit my mum, and so when she came and visited recently, I had to give it to her. So then I decided I had to cast one on for myself. This is a pattern that is so fun to knit. I really missed having it on my needles when I finished the last one, so I was really happy to cast on again. I've also had this yarn in my stash for a long time, just waiting for the right project to come up for me to use it. This is the Qing Fibre Melted Baby Suri, which is like a sport weight alpaca silk, I think, or is it alpaca merino? I can't remember. And this is yarn that is hand dyed by Tracy of What Mustard Made. And it's a unicorny neon pastel-y type thing. So I'm holding these two together. And this is what it's creating. So this is a bottom-up cardigan. So this is like a long strip at the moment because it's a bottom-up cardigan. So this is what it's looking like. And it's so soft. It's in a mistake rib with cables, lovely big textural cables. Oh, I just love it. And sometimes this is the colour and the softness that I need in my hands. I think perhaps when I feel like I need a real comfort, you know, a hug or just softness, this is the same sort of therapy as stroking a rabbit or something like that. I mean, it is just beautiful yarn, really Moorish design, which is fun as well as straightforward. Yeah. So this is my treat, and because I was so disappointed to finish the last one, I am not in a rush to finish this one, despite the fact that I know I'm going to want to wear it. But at the moment, this is my real, I save this for when I really need that feeling of being looked after and having a hug kind of thing. Yeah. If you don't follow Fatimah already, she is Disturbing the Fleece on Instagram. Fatimah is an educator and has already done a lot in terms of enabling our community to be more aware of the injustices in the world, particularly around white privilege and racism, white supremacy systems that we live in. I have woken up to my own white privilege. Probably my big awakening, I think, was back in 2018. I think Layla F. Saad was doing a Me and White Supremacy Instagram journaling prompt month, and that was my moment when I realized that yes, I may be disabled, but oh my goodness, I have a lot of privilege, and what to do with that. So rather than feel ashamed at my part in holding up white supremacy, it's more that kind of coming to terms with it and then using my privilege to try and help change those systems which I think are broken in the world. So that's another one of those rants that I warned you about. But Fatimah, some of the lives that Fatimah's done on Instagram, I still think about the words that she has used from lives that she did maybe 12 months, 18 months ago. And that's powerful, isn't it, when you find an educator like that who can really communicate so in such a way that you still feel it, you know, deep inside a year on. I really recommend following Fatimah. Her patterns are great, really good fun. I've knit another of her cardigans that was in Radical Threads, I think, which I'll show you another time. But anyway, this is a lovely pattern. My mum loves her cardigan, and I am looking forward to having this one eventually, but not in a rush. Okay, I'm going to have a little break. So, one of the other reasons why I decided I wanted to start doing a knitting podcast is because in the process of sharing the finished objects that I have knit or I have test knit for a designer, and really wanting to do their patterns justice in terms of that finished object photograph so that they can then share it as well on their feed and help them to grow, I have noticed myself in the past struggling with body confidence. When I was signed off sick about 7 years ago, I was easily slim, annoyingly so. I could eat anything I wanted to, and I was still a UK size 8 to 10 or something. I was really annoying, I think. I hadn't had to buy new clothes in years because they still fit me, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. And I never appreciated, I definitely took that for granted and just got on with my day without really thinking about how difficult it is for some people to find clothes that fit, etc., etc. And I've been working really hard since being unwell and not well enough to exercise exercise can actually make me a lot worse, which is really annoying. So I've gained a lot of weight, and I was taking the finished object photographs for that greeny blue bright top, the Sweet Whispers tea that I showed you earlier for Susan. And not only did I feel great in that tea, I felt like myself. I felt vibrant and beautiful. And I was looking at some of those pictures that I'd taken and thought, well, I'm a big girl now. but also this is beautiful and this is fine, you know? So part of my journey in the last few months especially has been to really try and be kinder to myself in terms of the words that I use when I'm thinking about how I look, but also to just shine in the body that I currently have. And that's not easy, and there's a huge amount of self-doubt that comes from that. But it all stems from that I want to take photos that do this design justice, that will help this design flourish in the world like it should. And that's got to be in the body that I currently have. I don't have any other options. And so if that's the case, then I'm going to continue on from that and not be frightened and not hide and not film myself. I'm going to, you know, take that next step. As I said before, there are a lot of people who I follow who have sent me encouragement, and people like Trish of the Best Day Ever Crafting podcast. If you don't follow Trish, please follow her. She's Tie-Dye Diva on Instagram, and she's the Best Day Ever Crafting podcast here. Trish is another person who, like Caleisha, has inspired me, not just in terms of my knitting. Believe me, every time Trish knits something, I want to knit that too. She's super inspiring. But again, I feel like Trish is just a natural artist, and she does journaling, art journaling, and I've learned an awful lot about art journaling from her. And I just, you know, she's just one of those people who I feel very fond of and very close to. So Trish has sent me a lot of encouragement. And I then saw an interview that Irina of Fibre Chats had with Tian, is it Connaughton? Yeah, Tian Connaughton had recently, so maybe June of this year, July of this year. And Tian Connaughton is someone who, like me, used to work in corporate. I was in corporate for about 20 years. And is now not in corporate, which is great. And I am so inspired when I see Tian's post about body confidence and about knitting and crocheting garments that make you feel good and that will fit you, and to not be disheartened by those patterns that are published that either you don't see your size in those finished object pictures, or they are just not size inclusive patterns. So I invested in this book. So it's called Cardigans for Everybody. I do love my cardigans. And after watching the interview that Tian had with Irina, I messaged, or I think I tagged them in, or I shared that I'd watched their interview in my stories. And I had this message back from Tian saying, what were your biggest take-homes from that interview? What was it that really, you know, moved you? So I said to her that I'd been struggling to kind of put myself out there because of body confidence, and that the words that she had used in her interview with Irina had really struck home with me. and had really helped me to think, right, I can do this, I can do this, no matter how different my body is than what it used to be. And again, Tian was another person who sent me a long message, and the encouragement that I felt having read that message, I was flabbergasted at the time that she had taken and how much of a difference that made to me. So again, like the message from Soraya, it's one of the things that it's taught me, that if I'm moved by something that I see, or if I really believe that something that someone has done or said or shared is of value, that I should reach out and share that with that person, because those messages, my goodness me, they mean the world. So thank you, Tian. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but thank you for your words, and thank you for your book. I read the first few pages and I had to put the book down. I was almost in tears. It just hit home, and it really hit me where I'm at the moment. And I am really looking forward to trying the knitted version of the cardigan to fit my body in this, but I also really want to challenge myself to try and crochet a cardigan. So far I have only I have managed to do a very scrappy crochet blanket, which is, you can see behind me here. It's very gappy at the moment. I'm a very loose crocheter, so just the granny stitch. And again, I knit a wrap designed by my friend Caleisha, who's Nadiratani on Instagram, which again is granny stitch, and I love that wrap. Pardon me. But I want to challenge myself to learn more crochet stitches and to become a more beautiful crocheter, if you like. So this is one of my dream knits. It's an inspiration, and I'm hugely grateful to Tian for writing this book. She self-published it, and again for her inspiration and her work in the world. Thank you, Tian, so much. Other things that are bringing me joy at the moment. So this summer, in this building up my confidence to get out there a bit more, I have been playing with new skincare. So I've gone down a rabbit hole there. I haven't got new skincare in years and years and years, and as a 47-year-old woman, I did suddenly start noticing that my skin was beginning to sag, and so I had a few Trinny of London products before and enjoyed them, so I'm full on into this Trinny of London skincare routine now. And it's not been very long, but I already see results in terms of my skin feeling more plump, and you know, the blemishes being hidden, and not feeling like I don't have any foundation on today. The skincare's all very well thought out, so I'm really impressed with that and I'm enjoying that. I'll link it below. Other things were that I watched the film, The Perfect Find, the other day. I don't know if you've watched that film. It's on Netflix. Oh, it was one of those films that I watched and I thought, I haven't seen a film that's made me feel this amazing, moved, that I feel like I don't think I've seen a film that has been that well done, directed, acted, in years. And I was knitting to begin with, and I ended up putting my knitting down. I was gripped by the acting and the direction of that film. So, and I cried a lot. I never used to be a crier until I had a baby who's now nearly 14. Now I cry quite easily, it turns out. But if you haven't watched The Perfect Find yet, I recommend it. The director is Miss Numa on Instagram, and Gabrielle Union and Keith Powers are the sort of starring actors. So yeah, that is in my top 3 favourite films now, definitely. And the last thing that has brought me a huge amount of joy, and as you can see from the room that I'm sitting in, and if you see my Instagram feed, you'll see that it's pretty colourful. So since quitting corporate life and being able to embrace colour in a lot more of a natural way, I find I'm drawn to very bright colours, and very bright. And my mum had the Colour Me Beautiful thing done when we were in the 1980s. I still remember her having the Colour Me Beautiful session and coming back all enlightened about her colour. And I think she's a winter, if you know what that means. And because people often say how alike my mum and I are, I just assumed I was a winter too. So I'd often gravitate towards those colours and just assume that those were my colours. Now, some of them are overlapping, but I discovered this website the other day as I was looking at palettes to see what yarn I was going to use. And I came across a similar thing to Colour Me Beautiful, but instead of 4 seasons, this was 12. I think there's a 16 version, there might even be an 18 version, I don't know. But this was a 12 one. And the website is gabriellearruda.com. I'll either have it on the screen or I'll link it below, definitely, because I read through all of it and you get all sorts of guidance about which season you may fall into. And then that you're given lots of examples of people and colours and outfits and that kind of thing. And I think I've discovered that I'm a bright or a clear spring, and for some reason that has felt like it's opened up this whole new world to me. Like, I try and explain this to my husband James and he just rolls his eyes at me. It's like, what now? But I can now see why I'm so drawn to colours like this, certainly my peaches and my aquas, and my brights, and actually that those are the colours that tend to suit me the most. And there are other colours that really don't suit me very well, and those are the ones that I do tend to avoid. So it was very kind of cathartic, but it also felt quite directional. So I'm really curious to know if any of you have had your colours done or what you think about all of that. But that has brought me a lot of joy. My current screensaver, I'll show you. My current screensaver is that colour palette. It's reflecting off it. But there you go. Those are my colours. And, you know, I really don't buy clothes at all often. I've only had to because I put on weight. But if I were to think, oh, I need a new shirt or I need a new dress, then I would absolutely be considering, is that in the colour and how might that fit? But I think especially with knitting and choosing yarn, have you seen Joji Locatelli's new pattern, the Instant Crush, which is 4 colours of mohair together? That one has really got me thinking, and I've been really looking at my palette and looking at what colours I have in my stash. I really try and use the yarn that I've already collected when I knit as much as possible. So yeah, lots of things to get excited about and think about, and in amongst the world burning and the sadness of that. What I will also do is, I know there are lots of people who have patrons and ko-fis and things like that, and that's all good for them. What I will do is, if you are wanting to donate to anything from having watched my podcast, there are a couple of anti-racism educators that I will link below. I'll link their Ko-Fis or their patrons, depending on which one there is, who have made the biggest difference to my learning, and whose work I think about all the time. There's Nova Reed, who I would really recommend following, respecting, buying her book, The Good Ally, and reading it. I'll talk about that more another time probably, but just because I know that a lot of people have these donate here type situations with their channels. For me, as the white privileged person that I am, I would prefer that if you are looking to donate money, that's where the money might go. What else? I have actually made some notes which surprised me. Oh, there is one more thing. So, do you watch the Knitting a Good Yarn podcast with Carmen and Jackie? They are two women who are based in Canada, who are therapists and who are friends, who knit and spin together, and I just enjoy them so much. They are hosting a knit along, which is going up until the winter solstice or something like that, which is the Fleur Along, where you are to knit a fleur shawl designed by Melissa Clulo. And they both knit their versions of the fleur shawl holding a goddess in mind, and I'm very into astrology. I don't know much about it, but everything I learn I am amazed by, and goddesses is just another kind of way of, it's another lens to look through how you move in the world. I think that's how I see it. I've always been really drawn to the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, and initially I thought, right, I'm going to join the knit along and I'm going to have Kuan Yin in my mind and I'm going to read up more about her. But the more I think about it, the more I think I am drawn to Hestia, who's the goddess of the hearth, because mainly I am somewhat stuck at home. Like if I go out of the house, my energy drains so fast. It's the sort of noise and the people that can just drain all my energy. So if I stay at home, I have more energy. And Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, and she's the one that people come home to. And in our family, you know, my husband and my son, they go out in the world, and they come back. And so that, for me, feels like a pretty special place to be. And I feel very fortunate to kind of be their North Star in that way, and to be home and safe and loved here. And I think that that would be a very wonderful meditation to have as I'm knitting a particular thing, along with some of the other humans who follow Carmen and Jackie. I'll share more about that another time, but in the meantime, I'd just like to thank you so much for coming, and I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me here, and I wish you all a very happy few days, week, whenever you're watching this, and I hope to see you again before too long. Thank you. Bye.